Welcome back, YouTube viewers. What we're going to do here is I'm going to do those backplane circuit boards for the card cages. Because it was such a hard thing getting those card cages out, I've obviously, and I've told you in the past videos, I'm going to recap them. But also, which has been pointed out to me, is to look over these solder joints. And I usually do look over the solder joints very carefully. But considering these cards will plug in and out of the card cage, they will flex that circuit board. And, you know, if it's not reflowed good from the factory, which it is, and mind you it is, those solder joints will break. I've read on a lot of the 820 forums and stuff like that, that the power connectors, which are the biggest ones, have a tendency of cracking the solder joints. So first I was just going to resolder those connectors, but at the same time I thought, why don't I just reflow all the other ones where the cards are going to plug in, because I'm a little concerned about them. They all look pretty good. I got to be honest with you, they do look good. But I'm going to reflow them anyway, just to play it safe. So in this video, we're going to take a look at reflowing these connectors, replacing the caps, and then probably in the next video, we'll get to actually putting the card cage back together and into the machine behind me. All right, so let's go take a look at this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to use this flux. This is by Chipquick NC191. The reason I use this particular one, it's a very, it's not a messy flux. It doesn't really leave a lot of residue. It says no clean, but yeah, you can clean it, and it cleans up really, really quickly with alcohol. So you can see now here, I'm just applying it to every single one, and those are the power connectors that I'm talking about, that are really kind of big, and they tend to break loose from the circuit board. They are used in other spots on here, and I've made sure that they were good, but this board's hard to get to. So we're going to reflow all of these joints right here on this, and make sure that these things are actually nice and solid. The fumes are getting to me, and I'm going to put a mask on because I'm choking basically doing this. The fumes are really going right up at me. But anyway, you can see just very carefully applying some more. This is not lead-free solder, this is leaded solder. But this flux will work on lead and leaded-free solder. And the reason, like I said, I like it, it's really good. It doesn't leave a lot of residue left over when you're done with it. It cleans up really nicely. Now there's 4 more pins right here with another connector very similar to that power connector. So we're going to do those 4 pins also. Again, just trying to make sure these joints are good, which they are, but I want to make sure they don't give me any problems in the future, because I don't want to take this board out again. This is just too hard to get to. So once again, here we go. Just real quickly solder these joints, and that's really what it's going to be. That's all it's going to be to this. Now, in this one, I'm going to apply that flux right down the line. Now, these are the back of the edge connectors. And so I'm going to put the flux on every one of these, and we'll just go right down them. Now, again, remember that this circuit board, because this is the second one, really only takes a couple of cards. I believe there's like, they're all audio ones, including the generator and stuff like that. So there's only a few cards that go on here. And we're just going to buzz through and reflow every one of these connections. The flux, for you don't know, makes the reflow much easier because it really adheres to the solder joint. Without the flux, really what you should do is remove the old solder and put new solder. But with the flux, it will apply really nice and easily to all the solder joints, and it flows, makes the solder flow perfectly, and flows only where the flux is at. Of course, the flux I put everywhere there, but if you're careful, you won't bridge any joints. So you get an idea of what's going on there. And I'm just going to rip right down here. I guess I could speed this up. I thought I'm going pretty fast myself, but I guess I could speed this up for everybody like that. So let me do that, and we'll come back after it's all sped up like. Okay, now as in any solder joint that you should do, you should really thoroughly inspect to make sure that there's no bridges, the solder's nice and clean, you don't have any, cold solder joints of where you moved anything. So that's really what I've done, is just inspecting those solder joints, make sure they're clean and everything's good, and then we'll use the flux, or a flux remover. Okay, so we're going to replace these caps, and I don't want to bore you with replacing the caps, but I wanted to point out a couple of things, a couple of tips for you on doing something like this. The way these caps are put in here, and they're very nicely done, okay, will allow me to take them out from the top without damaging anything. So notice I put a little flux, heated the joint, and boom, it lifted right out of there. So we'll do the same on the other side. In fact, I could use my fingers on this side, you'll see. So I'll heat the joint, and this cap will just slide right out. Now, the reason of doing that is we then can clean the holes, the pads, and we can clean them really good. You know, whether you have a power solder sucker or a manual one like I have, or even if you have something like solder wick, okay? But first, really, you need to do, like I'm going to do here, is you should add some extra solder in there so it flows really good. But you could see that I didn't really get those too clean. So I think what we'll do is we'll flip the board around and do it from the other side, and it should make a big difference getting them out of there. Okay, and of course I'm out of the camera range, but boom, there it is, nice and clean. And the other one that you can't see, take my word for it, is very clean too. Okay, so that's one thing to do, is when you can, so that you don't damage the board, is lift the component, slide it right out. Now, you can only do this when the components are placed in straight and not bent over. In other words, the leads aren't bent over the circuit thing, which I'll show you when I put the new capacitor in. So here's the new capacitor, okay? And the other thing to notice here is these aren't ordinary players. These are wire bending players. If you do this with an ordinary player, you're going to get a really sharp edge there, which is not good. The real sharp edge at the bend, which is not good for the lead. With vibration, it could break. But those are wire bending players. They're actually round. You see now it drops in now, but here's the key here. When you put this on when you go to the other side, and of course I'm out of the frame, there's one way at the top, you could just barely see it, is you don't bend those leads over. You just give them a slight bend, enough to just kind of hold them into the, hold them on the circuit board. There you go. Just a slight bend so they hold on the circuit board without cap going and falling out of place. All right, and now I'll solder it in like this. Now, if you do it like this, you could remove them the same way I'm removing these. And that's the beauty of doing this, is if you ever had to change a capacitor or change a component again, you could do it again without damaging the circuit board. So watch when you do that. Don't fold those leads over tough or tight, because that will cause that problem like that. You know, and the other thing I'm doing here, I mean, you would be wise to mark the circuit board, but what I'm doing is I'm doing one cap at a time, so I can't make a mistake, as the polarity of this is important, okay? You got to get the polarity. But look at how nice that lifts right out of there. Okay, and these are hard to unsolder, because those, I mean, you could notice that that's a ground plane on the right-hand side. So that takes a lot of heat and stuff to get that out of there and clean that solder joint up. Okay, here's where I'm saying I'll add a little solder to them, and adding a little solder, then you can use your whatever you're going to use, and it should be able to clean this out real good. My problem I had here is that I needed to replace the tip on the solder sucker, which I did eventually, but you know, here we are struggling our way through it again. So anyway, I won't bore you with this. The rest is pretty much the same. Pay attention to the polarity of the caps. Make sure that you don't bend the leads with pliers, because you're going to put too sharp an angle. You could bend it with your fingers, which is better than the pliers. But these are wire bending pliers that I'm using. So just bend the leads so that they're kind of round nicely on the thing. And now, one other thing I could point out, see these caps here? Now this thing really doesn't vibrate around or nothing like that, because this is a big machine that just sits there. If this is something that was on the road or whatever, you'd want to put a little bead of silicone glue underneath each cap, so it actually would hold it to the circuit board and it couldn't bounce around. But like I said, there's no need to do that in this case here, because this board really isn't going to bounce around or nothing like that. Okay, and that's it. I mean, the other thing, I think you could see the two different cap styles. The new caps have an arrow pointing to the negative. The old caps actually have a line on the negative. There's a line that circles the negative end. And so just be careful, pay attention to the polarity. Like I said, that's why I did these one at a time on this. All right, so that's enough said. I'm going to fast forward through the rest of this, and I'll be with you at the end. Well, there's probably no sense in showing you the other card, which is exactly the same, just different capacitors. So I did the same thing to the other card. I actually have to do it in the machine, because I didn't want to unsolder those other wires that I showed you in one of the previous videos. So with both cards done, the next step is to actually install them back into the card cage, get the card cage back into the machine, plug all those connectors back together again. We're going to do that in the next video, so hold on. Keep watching, and I'll show you how that is done. But it's pretty simple like that. But I hope you enjoyed this one. I wanted you to really get an idea of a couple of the things. Was that flux. That flux really works really well on stuff when you're reflowing stuff. Okay, additional flux. That is flux, rosin core flux solder. But the additional flux is really good when you use it like that. And the other thing is those caps. Removing caps, resistors, anything from a circuit board without damaging the circuit board. So if you could do it that way, like pull the component out and then suck the solder out, it's a much better way to do it. You're definitely not going to harm the thing. Of course, that's not a wood burning soldering iron thing. That's a genuine soldering iron. So it holds a constant temperature. It's not that hot. I'm not going to ruin the circuit board, but you got to be careful on these things because these things are pretty much irreplaceable. These circuit boards. So without further going on anymore. Because I could go on forever without talking any more about this. Thank you for watching this. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Click the bell and I'll notify you when the next one's coming out. Okay, YouTube viewers, I'll see you soon.